Hello guys, welcome back to Go Discs. In this installment of the video, we are looking at Dick Spanner PI. This is a Jerry Anderson TV show from the late 80s, 1987, I think. And obviously it's a very interesting one actually. If you're familiar with Jerry Anderson, who did Captain Scarlet, Thunderbirds, Terrorhawks, all them sort of stuff, Space 99, all them type of things. This is probably worth checking out actually. Here's why. It's stop motion animation, and it focuses on the misadventures, the cases of a robot, parody detective called Dick Spanner. Goes around the Big Pear, which is sort of a parody on the Big Apple, really. And this very dangerous city is full of crazy characters, a lot of odd characters as well. Various different types of characters. Rather than just robots or anything. It's very mixture and everything else. And it's full of life, very good set designs as well, interesting animation as well. And it's all narrated by Shane Rimmer, who voiced Scott Tracy in Thunderbirds, and also worked on a few other Anderson projects at those times really, which is perfect. He is Shane Rimmer is always great, and this actually really sells it really. Obviously it's based, it's like again, the thing they say it's Chandler-esque, Columbo type detective. It's that sort of thing. Like he's a bumbling private detective who goes around solving cases. And there's about 4 cases on this DVD. There was a version that was released about in 2007, which is not worth getting because it's got only the 2 cases on it. Plus, at that time they were sort of weren't found or made really at that point. Also, there's some new music as well, which doesn't suit how it looks, and also the format of how the picture is not the best really, because I know everyone's sort of complained about it really on that front. But the new version from 2017 is worth getting, which I'm talking about this one, which is worth it. So we'll go through these cases really. So the first one, of course, is the case of the human cannibal. Of course, when Dick tries to try and find Harry the human cannibal, who's like a major man in the circus really, and obviously that leads to him to various different places, and leads him to Mexico, where there's this recurring character called the Fat Man, known as Sidney Side Street, he's known as, but he's known as the Fat Man, as Dick refers him to. Very sort of very fat, wears a fez on top really, and disguises himself really. Sort of, I think he leads Spanner off the case really, and just leads into dangerous perils really. So he ends up in Mexico, tries to find Harry, of course. In doing so, the actual revelation is that this is quite a little plot twist really at the near to the end of the story really, of the case, is that Harry is actually Harriet, a woman. So she's a woman so she's a female cannonballer really. It's like, okay, I wasn't really expecting that really, and I thought, what a great start, pretty good, and this leads into the next case actually. So it actually continues on really. So the case of the Maltese Parrot's next, and that sort of continues on from Human Cannibal. So it's sort of staging together, where Dick has to go to Ivywood to find this Maltese parrot belonged by 2 brothers. One who's small, I think 3 foot, and the other one's like 8 foot or something, which is like, when you look at it, it's quite bonkers, but they're both brothers really. So the one, the Maltese, this gold parrot they had, and ends up in Ivywood. He finds it. He does. I think someone actually gives it to him in his office when he's in Ivywood, like he's in his temporary accommodation. But he goes around, of course. He meets some famous movie star called Gloria, but meets these I guess we call the story itself really. I'm thinking on the top of my head again how it goes again. It's like the smalls want to take over Hollywood, and the largers want to are sort of getting defunct and retired really at the point. You get stuff like parodies of like John Wayne and famous actors from the 60s and 50s really. And it's like, they're past their prime, of course, and they're basically just, they're sort of like a little hidden cult really, if you look at it, and they're basically just band together and take down the Smalls, which apparently this again, this director as well, again, seen his side street in disguise, really, all the fat man refers to, is the director, of course. He plans to make small, like, movies for smaller people, apparently. And it's like, you know, it's like for a budget thing, like a temporary budget thing, of course. Like, you want smaller people to do small things, like you know, make a Greek disaster or something. You know, I think that's what they're filming in the show, really. There are some interesting cliffhangers as well at this point. You know, Dick Saul gets stuck on a road track with a woman, a damsel in distress, and you know, it's I think, okay, where's this going? Actually, he ends up on a film set at the next, when you see the next part, because how these are structured is they're like 5 minute, 6 minute parts, really, like in terms of like it spans over like 11 chapters, really. You know, like you have like 5-6 minutes on what, you know, for part 1, part 2 to 11, and same again for Maltese Parrot as well. You know, so they're basically, you know, the 2 11-part stories. Whereas there's 2 versions you can actually watch. There's the standard versions, like the televised versions, which are on disc 1, and disc 2 is the compilation versions, which I think are the later broadcast ones that are so like for about 25 minutes, I think. You know, into like, you know, they put different parts together and basically form a cohesive like 25-minute broadcast, I think. Yeah, I think that's just a recap on that one, really. Just to, you know, and yeah, interesting. So I think these 2 actually are really good because the only ones they were ones that were made at the time and were released on video and the first edition of DVD, of course. Well, I think they're really good, of course. Very interesting stories, very wacky stories as well, which is very interesting. So it's like experimental, Jerry Anderson, Terry Adlam, you know, Christopher Burr type stuff, really. Again, quite off the wall, very bonkers, and they just do what the hell they want, really, at this point. It's like everything flips around in a circle. One thing to mention about with Spanner, of course, you really have to pay attention to what's going on sometimes with the stories. If you get distracted, you get like something pop out of the sky, you think, oh, what happened there? Why is Dick covered in custard or anything like that? What's happened there? Because it keeps throwing stuff at you. It does. It's like it keeps you off guard. It does. Like if you're distracted for about a minute or so, you definitely get something. You know, out. You think, oh, what happened there? What happened there? You have to really pay attention to this stuff. But it's good. The gags are fantastic. There's a lot of in-joke satire as well. You know, very deadpan, very bad joke type situations. It's just really good. It is. So it's worth getting this DVD. If you're a fan of Jerry Anderson stop motion, that's really good. We haven't finished yet though, because we've got 2 more editions included on this version, of course, which we have The Case of the Missing Episode. At this point, of course, I think they were doing another. This would have been the 3rd one. This is, and it parodies an Agatha Christie story, 10 Little Ends. I'm not going to say the word, of course, which obviously it's homaging. This is so Dick ends up on a plane to Paris. Well, he ends up landing in Paris, of course, and they meet up with this. He meets this Asian fella and ends up at this Chinese takeaway in the Eiffel Tower, which he has strangely put up there, like a Chinese takeaway on the Eiffel Tower, or the Awful Tower, I think it's referred to as. And he ends up meeting up with these other detectives, of course, which are parodies of, you know, Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson. I think how shame how I pronounced that. I found it quite funny. Hercules Parrot, Mrs. Marbles, someone called Pseudonym, which is again the fat man who returns. Disguised there, and someone called Ironhide, which is like some guy with a crash helmet and a wheelchair. Funny. It's interesting. It is, you know, and some guy called a Finger, which is just a skeleton. You know, so they have so it's basically these 10 private detectives who's basically called on board to meet up in Paris in this Chinese takeaway, and then being taken out because Pseudonym gets dropped off with a big massive anvil or something that pops out and stuff like that, and everyone flees. Dick walks out and ends up falling down. Like this supposedly it's meant to be an exit, but it's not, because someone changed the sign, really, like secretly, just like, you know, no entry or something, just to exit or something, and he just falls down the Eiffel Tower. Now this was never completed, so this is only the first part of it. So it's like the first 5 minutes or so of meant to be another 11-parter, which they never actually managed to complete, strangely. not too sure what happened really with that one. It would have been interesting to see what else would have come out actually. Now, one thing is interesting because Shane Remmer's not voicing Dick Spanner in this one. It's actually a guy called Jeremy Hitchin who does this, who appeared on Terrorhawks. So, and actually, to be fair, he actually does a decent job doing Dick Spanner. He captures Shane Remmer's sort of, again, narrated style, of course, and it does work. It sort of goes hand to hand. Like if they continue with Cost of Jeremy Hitchin, that's might be actually alright actually because how he portrays it, it's actually pretty good, really interesting stuff. You know, so this was I think this would have been produced in '87, but it was never finished, and no idea why. There's no reason. We have no definite reason why, really. You know, there's no. I think if someone comment down below, really, what they missed, the case they missed an episode, how it stopped production or something, because we only got the first part of it. It could be like I don't know actually, change of management or something, or just people were disinterested. I don't really know, but it's still pretty good. So it's still worth checking out, and it's also exclusive to this 2017 edition, of course. And then finally, we end up with the last case, of course, which is the case of the Screaming Dame. So this is an animatic, like a comic book storyboard type style done by Terry Adlam, and Shane Remmer returns as Dick Spanner. So this is a very interesting one because it's basically 30 years. It details 30 years later that Dick Spanner's been missing. He'd been missing for about 3 decades or so, and he ends up and they found like, oh, he's found in a dumpster, and ends up being rebuilt by a couple of German voice actors, apparently, because all the doctors have gone on strike, so they end up they have these actors to rebuild him back to his normal self, of course. And right from the get-go, you can tell it's different because Shane Remmer's, at this point, of course, well, sadly passed away a couple of years later after this one from 2017. Very gruff he is, very so gruff, but he still has its merits, of course, where he's narrating. Obviously, it's in 2D. It still retains its looniness and craziness, of course, but obviously it's not stop motion. It's actually just digital storyboard, comic book type material. But it's interesting. Design-wise, it works. It does. It still retains its original music as well. So it's basically like it's still a continuation, which is pretty good. The story apparently goes like Dick Spanner returns to see May East, who's a recurring character for the stories, like his love interest, and he meets this woman in the elevator, in the lobby, and apparently she's like actually it's later revealed to be she's like some lurer or something like that. Like she lures people with a scream, like she's been captured or something. Really, you think of it, like you think, oh, she's been taken, really. And you see this like massive mouth come out of her, and it's like, oh, really? And so he tells her to the docks, and ends up in the wrong one. I think, why were they hiding in a duvet factory? So he ends up going to this other one, which is later revealed to be full of like a fireworks factory. He ends up going to the air, ends up head first onto a sheep airplane made of sheep wool, yes, and lands down on the duvet as well, like the duvet factory. At least they have soft landed, of course. Meets again with O'Grady, who has his partner's basically is a clone of O'Grady but smaller, who's another recurring character, the chief inspector. Similar to me, it's like you can't really see, his eyes. You can see his mouth, just his head. His mouth is just across his face. Really, it's interesting. I just think of Maniac Cop when I think of that. Of O'Grady, and basically just tries to book him again because I think he was flying without a license or something or permission. That's another recurring thing throughout the stories, of course. He tends to book him like you're flying high or using an elevator in the sky without permission, so I'm going to have to arrest you. Interesting. So he ends up going to this bar and ends up going to meets like a guy who basically like a Scrabble club and whack him to death with Scrabble pieces, okay, like giant ones. Interesting. And he ends up being knocked out and ends up on this stage show. And apparently, this of course took me off guard. How Adlam decided to put characters of different shows in as well, because you can tell that the obvious ones like Shaun the Sheep, Wallace and Gromit in the audience, Morph, There's quite, I think there might be a couple more actually, but you do get people like O'Grady as well in the audience. Like, that was quite interesting. And also you meet this a guy called Professor Innuendo, and he's basically just like doing like a traveling show or something, I think. And I just don't know. It felt a bit strange really after Resolution. Like it sort of like dipped a bit. Like you think, like, what? Oh, right, okay. Was that what the whole point of this thing was? Like the Screaming Dame was, and obviously she just lures people in really, of course, to just do the show thing. Obviously he ends up finishing, escapes, lands down, and the ending shot, of course, he ends up face first in a pile of elephant shit. Okay, that's okay. You think, oh Christ, or something. It's like that's how you finish it. That's how you finish off Dick Spanner. You know, interesting. It's an interesting release, it is. You know, so there's those 4 cases really, and to be fair, it's a nice little swan song in a way. Like he returns after 30 years. If it was like RoboCop Corporate Wars in a way, like he's been reactivated after many years, you know, and takes on whatever. You know, it's like that really. Sort of really. You know, it makes me think of that. But it's a good release. If you're a fan of Jerry Anderson and like Thunderbirds, if like me, because I grew up with Thunderbirds as a kid, definitely get this. Once you see it, it's actually brilliant. It is. You know, down to Shane Rimmer and Jamie Hitchen as well. Just really good. It's a shame they didn't do any more. You know, there might have been potential, but obviously from the case of the missing episode, there might have been changes or stuff behind the scenes or something. That, you know, we don't even know. But it would have been interesting. You know, it would have been like another pile to like an ongoing series, like maybe you know many more with the adventure of Dick Spanner. Absolutely. And there you go, guys. Dick Spanner PI. This is from 2017. Definitely worth getting this. You know, try and find Amazon, eBay. I got this from eBay actually a couple days ago, I think. I'm recording this in March, in sort of like late March. This will be coming out in whenever in April, May, or whatever. But it's worth getting. I've seen all of it, and it's just fabulous. Really worth checking out. Thank you guys for watching. As always, see you for the next video, and goodbye.